Hi, and welcome to this Android video. This is a demonstration on sensors. When we talk about sensors, we're specifically talking about hardware sensing activities in Android. And location is one of these, but location is accessed in a slightly different way. We access location with a location manager. We access sensors, the other sensors, let's say, with a sensor manager object. Here we can see that I've set up in our main activity a sensor manager. I've just called it S manager. I've set it to null. And then in onCreate, I am calling a method here that I've defined called log sensors. Now the first thing you need to do when you're working with sensor data in Android is to collect as many devices as you possibly can. What we're going to be doing here is looking at just the sensors that are detected with the emulator. And we can do this because the emulator now will provide us with some goldfish sensors. And these can be used using something that is on Google, that we are able to emulate some of these hardware sensing activities. And we're not going to do that, but I will provide you with a link in the discussion that will tell you how to download that software so that you can emulate some of these sensor activities. But always the best practice is to not emulate the sensor code, but to actually run it in devices. So the first thing you need to do when you are writing sensor code is to collect as many device types as you possibly can, or for the target device kind of area. Are you looking at tablets? Are you looking only at phones? Collect as many of these within the target APIs as you possibly can, and run this kind of code that we're looking at right now to detect the actual sensors that are present on the device. So what does this code do? Well, first it sets up the S manager by casting a system service of type context.sensor service to a sensor manager type, and then setting that into S manager. Then we get a list, and this is just a generic list of sensors, and we're calling it sensors, and we're getting a sensor list. So get sensor list is going to return a list generic, and we want to get sensor.typeAll because we want all the sensors that are available on this particular emulator, or on this particular device. Actually, you would never really run this to find out what's in an emulator, but be that as it may. And then for each element in that list, we're getting the name by calling get sensor get name. We can also get other properties. Sensor has many different getters for the various properties. And then we're just logging out that name. So when we run this code with the emulator, we're going to see that the emulator indeed reports these 5 sensors: an accelerometer, a magnetic field sensor, an orientation sensor, a temperature sensor, and a proximity sensor. And these are pretty common. These 5 will be on pretty much any device that Android is installed on. So you're going to have an accelerometer, and probably may or may not have a magnetic field sensor, but it's pretty typical. You'll have an orientation sensor and a temperature sensor, and proximity sensors are very common as well. Now, I'm going to make some changes and pause this video, and I'm going to make some changes to look at particular data. Now, of course, we won't be able to run this with the with the emulator, but you should run this on your own. This kind of code that I'm going to show you here, you should run this on your own device or devices to see how it would work. I'm going to use the accelerometer because the accelerometer is going to definitely be present on any Android device. All right, I'll be back after I make the changes to the code. Okay, welcome back. What we've done here is I've also set up a private sensor type called Accel for the accelerometer, and then in onCreate, and I'm no longer using this log sensor method, but it's a nice thing to keep in your code until you're done testing, just to be able to get out all of the sensors that are on the device and take a look at them. First, I instantiate the S manager by getting the system service, and I move this into onCreate, and then I instantiate Excel by using that sensor manager, S-manager, dot get default sensor, and I want to use, for an accelerometer, the type accelerometer of the sensors class. Now, the other thing I've done is we can see the activity is now implementing sensor event listener, and this is the easiest way to make an activity a listener for sensor events, or to set up a listener for sensor events. So now this activity itself is an event listener, and it listens for two events: a change in accuracy and a change in the actual value sent back by the sensor. So we're not doing anything with this change in accuracy at this moment, but we are doing something with the change in the actual value sent back by the sensor. And this is the onChange method, and it gets an event. Now, what we've done is we're looking at the values in this event. This is all we need to do. Different sensors will throw back different values, and the values is an array. And here, with an accelerometer, the values will be the acceleration, including the force of gravity, for, in this order, the x, the y, and the z-axis of the device. So values sub 0 is the x, values sub y is the, values sub 1 is the y, and values sub 2 is the z. And all we have to do in this case is log those out. Now, of course, in production code, you would do something different than just log these out. You could move a graphic around on the screen depending on which side was actually lower. You could do any number of things. However, in this case, just to get started with an actual device and looking at the sensors on an actual device, and of course we can't run this in the emulator, it's not going to work. Here we're just logging out the X, Y, Z values of the accelerometer. Now, if you'd wish to use a different sensor, you would just replace the type and read the appropriate values. And all of this is available. The values array elements are available on developer.android.com for you to look at. Also, we have wrapped up the registering of that listener and the unregistering of the listener in our onResume and onPause methods for this activity. Event listeners for these system events, for these sensor events, will run down your battery. So you need to be careful that you're not polling all the time, that you have some way to register and unregister these listeners. So we've done that here by unregistering in onPause and re-registering in onResume. Of course, the first time we run this, onResume will be called and the register listener will happen. This is the listener. In other words, this activity is the listener because this activity implements sensor event listener. So we can see that this is very, very simple in concept. The hard part, really, is not setting up the sensor. The hard part is determining what you want to do with the data that you get back, whether that's temperature data, accelerometer or gyrometer data, even location data. The hard part is going to be for you to figure out what to do in your application with that data. Thank you very much.